Alrighty, what did you learn? What did you discuss with your neighbor? Just show it.
Not everyone.
You learned how to pat your belly and over your head?
Maybe you can't do that.
Good.
Well, I didn't just learn this now, but money isn't everything. You don't need a big house in order. You have to recycle.
Okay.
You want me to say something?
If you want to.
I applied it here to work and just, other people having success in what they do and wanting to get there and just being really careful and conscious of when they do that to make sure I'm patting them on the back and not to say something that's talking to them.
Yeah, that's cool. So you're going to stop petting with me.
That's kind of what figure out what to do.
Anybody else?
But by taking that negative that you are talking about, even with the runner or whatever, and stopping yourself and flipping it over brings your level of esteem up a little bit too. Just like switch, train problem.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and you know what, you can't judge people because everyone has a story. And so you have to remember to think about that when you're thinking of bad things.
That's cool. Good. Alrighty. I'd like to move along to a couple of illustrations of some other pitfalls, some stumbling blocks that people come up against. One very common thing that people come up against, especially women, not to be sexist, but you do run into this more often, that you put everyone else first. Society has this condition to give from empty tank. But I've read it in a book somewhere.
We learned it at seminar.
Yeah. That basically everything else comes first. So you're giving and giving and giving from an empty tank. So I'd like to draw this illustration. It already is drawn. I'd like to use this illustration. That is good, eh?
Yeah.
You'd almost think I drew that up ahead of time.
I'll take some notes. How do you do that?
So this is what society conditions us to do. Like I said, and I said it's worse for women, but it's the same for men. I think it is just a little bit more prominent with women. So here's you, and maybe all these things don't apply for you, but I'm sure if one of them doesn't, there's something else that I don't have written down that does. So here's you, and this red arrow is energy that you're putting out toward your business or your schooling if you're like a lifetime student that never stops studying. Looking after your house. Any mother spends a lot of energy putting towards her kids, toward your job, toward your spouse, towards social commitments or other things that you feel obligated to do. These are all the excuses that people will use rather than looking after themselves. And some people will jump to the conclusion that I mean a work oath when I say this, that, oh yeah, people use these things as an excuse rather than going to the gym. But people also use these as an excuse as their reason for not taking the time to themselves to take 30 minutes to read a book or run a hot bath or whatever it is that their body needs that day. So I ask you this, if you're driving down the road and your car runs out of gas, completely out of gas, do you go and look down on it and say, you stupid car, we still have other commitments that we need to get to. Why won't you run? Okay. How well does that work?
It's like, okay, here's stuff to do.
It doesn't usually answer your back.
No.
Or when your BlackBerry runs out of battery and she's dead, you don't say, come on, give me one more message. And yeah,
You didn't say that.
I am talking to the wrong crowd. And yet, people will run their own tank empty. The warning lights come on and they still ignore it because I gotta look after this and I gotta look after that and I gotta look after all these things. And the ironic thing is that if you would put yourself first and do what society conditions us to think is selfish, you would actually be refueling the tank by putting energy in here, whether that's a work out or a work in or a hot bath or whatever you need to re-energize yourself. You're not being selfish at all. You're just refueling that tank to have even more to give all of your excuses. So it's really ironic. It's a catch-22. It's a trick that God plays on us. that you need to give to yourself. You need to be selfish in order to be selfless. Does that make sense? So even with that, sometimes I still get the excuse or the reason, whether they say it or not, that people just don't think they're worth it. So I'd like to share a demonstration that I was shown to show you how everyone in this room is worth $1 billion.
$1 billion?
Yeah, I've seen the movie.
Big money.
Big money? I'm not familiar with the movie at all. I'm out of the loop. Alright, so does everyone in the room have things that are worth between $1 and $10?
Yeah.
Good. I am talking to the right crowd. I thought another question was going to fall flat here. I'm really worried. For a small crowd, you guys are tough. Alright, how about things in the tens of dollars? You got CDs and things like this, movies, things. Yeah. How about hundreds of dollars? Do you have a leather coat or a nice night out with your spouse or probably buying your kids sneakers? You have things in your life that are worth $100? Alright, thousands of dollars. Your MacBooks or your big screen TVs, all these things. You have these things?
Yeah.
Alright. Tens of thousands. Can you go buy a brand new vehicle for less than $10,000?
No.
Good. If you find one, let me know. Into the hundred thousands. Whether you own your home or not, it's got to be worth at least $100,000 to you to have a roof over your head to protect yourself and your family and the things you care about. Your friends. I did this a couple weeks ago and I asked the question and I said, would you sell your friends for $1 million? Which ones? I'm going to assume that you answered no, so you have that taken care of. So you have your extended family, your aunties, your uncles, things like this. Most people think those are worth even more than your friends. So personally, because my wife is here, I am going to say I wouldn't trade my wife and kids for $100 million. So that is this taken care of. So we all have these things in our lives that are worth all this. What happens if you don't take care of you? If that one represents you, and you don't take the time to put yourself first and be selfish, and you don't maintain your own health and vitality, what is it? All of these other things that you put priority on, what are they worth?
No.
It's all for naught.
It's all for naught. So we can be worth $1 billion, but we need to look after that one in order to do it. I guess the way I would say to recap that is the step one is to recognize whether you are maybe at times guilty of putting everything else first and not putting enough value on yourself. It's just to do a self-assessment. Nobody else can make that assessment for you. But ask yourself, are you looking after yourself or are you putting everything else more than you should, out of proportion, ahead of yourself? Stop. The best way to stop is remember this. If nothing else, I hope that you guys remember this illustration or the last one about the value of refueling your own tank and making sure that we are all, in fact, worth $1 billion. How to set yourself up for success? Really, I think it comes down to just decide to put yourself first. Decide that no matter what, you're going to look after that number one so that you have the strength and the health and the vitality to appreciate all those other things in your life. And the word decide means to cut off from all other possibilities. Just decide. No other possibility exists. Just decide right here and right now. That's it.